Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. If you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up or commenting below. If you want to see more of my videos, press the subscribe button and click on the bell for notifications. If you need any Stampin' Up! Products to make this card, you can visit my online store, and the link is in the description box below. Today I'd like to share with you how I created this beautiful card using all the elements in the In Good Taste suite. So I just wanted to kind of walk through those different products with you today. So the first product I want to show you is the stamp set and die bundle. So this is the stamp set that I'm using for the card today, and it comes in the suite. It's called Tasteful Touches, and I really love all the different textures that come in this stamp set, as well as the greetings are really beautiful and can be used for any card. Now, the labeled dies are really perfect for card making. I love them. There are 5 different die shapes, and they all are different shapes, and they each have a different border around them. So these 5 have a stitched border, and then these 5 have an embossed border around that edge. And the shapes are just really fun to work with, and you can stack them. So you can see that like this would stack really nicely in this one. This could stack nicely in that one. This fun circle is really fun to put on top of anything. And the same goes with these as well. All right, so the next thing that comes in this suite is the designer series paper. And so here is a sample of the paper. There's 24 sheets, and so it's pretty large. And so I couldn't just pull out the paper pack and show you them in person. But this image shows you all the different types of designs and styles that you get in that designer series paper pack. And so you get some different wood grains and tiles, and there's textiles in there. And I'm just really excited to have this paper. I really love paper that has texture to it and is very neutral, so you can use it on any project. The next thing in this suite is the Tasteful Textile embossing folder. And so here's that embossing folder, and I just embossed some paper really quick so you can kind of see what type of texture it gives. And so this texture is really just a very subtle texture, but it's strong enough that you can see it, and it just lends a really nice, it's just a really nice element to add to your projects. And the last thing that's in this bundle that we're going to be using for our card today are the In Good Taste elements. And these are wooden elements, and they've been laser cut. One side is more of a lighter wood color, and then on the other side, so there's the light color, on the other side it's where they've cut it, and so you get more of a burnished brown color, as well as there's detail. So you can see here in these like plus signs that you get a little bit of a detail to that. And the same goes with the leaves. This one is such a beautiful leaf image, and then here you can see that you've got some detail in there, and then you've got a darker brown on this side. So you could really use either side for your project, and so we're going to be using that today as well on our card. So for this card today, we're using a lot of fun and different techniques to achieve these different feelings of texture and softness. And so I hope you enjoy watching me make this card and give these new techniques a try. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to stamp on this white Whisper White piece of cardstock in the back. And we're going to be using this fern leaf image from the stamp set. So I'm just going to add that to a clear block. And we're going to stamp this in 2 different colors. And so I'm going to be using a scrap piece of paper under my work surface. And then the other thing we're going to stamp is this texture here. It's kind of like a lacy texture. And so we're going to add that to a clear block as well. And so we're going to be using some new in colors. So for this lacy texture, we're going to be using Bumblebee. So let's go ahead and start with that. So this is a really fun image, and we don't really need it to be perfect on our background. So we're just adding it randomly around, and we're going to kind of stay within this one section of our card. So just kind of add it to the top of that section and bring it down just slightly to the bottom, and then maybe over here as well. So we're not worrying too much about the top and bottom, just the middle section. The next thing we're going to stamp is the fern, and we're going to be using the new Cinnamon Cider brown color, and it's again a new in color for 2020-2022. So we're going to start by just stamping this randomly. We're going to keep it to the edges of our cardstock. So I'm going to place one here at the top, maybe bring one down. I can flip it around, bring one down here on this edge, and then we'll do one that's kind of in the middle here on this edge. Like that. So now our stamping for that piece is done, and we're going to create a softer look by spritzing it with a Stampin' spritzer. Now I just have a little bit of water in here, and you do want to just move things out of your way so you don't get them wet. And you're just going to spritz your cardstock just to kind of soften up that image and to let things kind of move around slightly. So I have now spritzed this with some water, and you can see that those images are bleeding slightly, and so it's giving us a softer look. So I'm just going to place this off to the side and let it dry. The next thing we're going to do this greeting, and the reason we're going to do it next is because it also involves water. So the first thing we're going to do is grab a scrap piece of paper, and I've got a large one because we're doing a lot of stamping and layering, and I'm going to add the Just Saying Hello greeting with some Versamark onto this paper. Then I'm going to place it in some white embossing powder and tap off the excess. And then I'm going to heat this with my heat tool. And now I'm going to cut out my greeting using one of the labels in the Tasteful Labels die set. I'm just going to run this through my die cutting machine. So next we're going to add this really pretty green watercolor look to our label. So you're going to start this technique by taking a clear block and your ink pad, and I'm using Old Olive. And you're going to smush this ink all over your clear block, and you can just kind of get a variation of ink. It doesn't need to be, totally filled of ink. Next, you're going to take a spritzer and you're going to spritz water on top of the clear block until it's nice and wet. And then you kind of want to work quickly, and you're just going to flip this over and press it down onto your image. Now, if it doesn't get the image everywhere, you can add some more color by just moving your label around and picking up some of that extra color on your block. There we go. I'm just going to use my finger and paint that color into those white spots. So I don't want there to be any white except for where the greeting is. And so if I need to maybe make the area around the greeting darker, I can do that as well with my really fancy tool, my finger. Just kind of picking up that ink and moving it into those spaces. Okay, so now we've got a really pretty watercolored background, and we can see our greeting really well through that Old Olive ink. So we're going to place this off to the side to dry, and we're going to kind of clean up our space a little bit, and I'll be right back and we can work on the card some more. Okay, so to continue on with our card, we're going to do our stamping here for our layers. So we've got these fern images, and we're going to do two that are in a dark color. This and this actually are one image that we've cut down into smaller shapes. And then we've got one in a lighter color, and I'm going to show you how we did that. And then with the flower, we've done the same thing. We've got a darker outline and a lighter outline. So let's go ahead and do that stamping. So the fern image is done again with Old Olive, and we've got two that are dark. So just go ahead and stamp those on your paper. And I've just got 2 different sizes of paper. You can use scrap paper or anything like that. Now to get the lighter one, I'm just going to stamp it again without restamping. And so I'm getting, like, they call this a second generation stamping. So you've got your first generation, which is darker, and then your second generation, which is lighter. And then for the flower, we're using Terracotta Tile. And it's interesting because the flower has more of a pink color than you'd think this tile has. But I think because we are watercoloring with it, as well as these other neutral colors, really pull that pink from this ink. And so we're going to go ahead and grab that image, and we're going to go ahead and put that, stamp that on our Whisper White cardstock as well. And I've got 2 of those using that second generation stamping. Okay, so now we're going to do some more watercoloring. We've got lots of techniques to this today. So I'm going to start with the leaves, and I'm just going to use the old olive again. I'm going to press the ink pad together to get some ink inside my lid. I've got a water brush, and you can get these through my online store as well. And you're just going to place some water with that ink, and then you're going to add it just to the tips. Well, that's pretty dark. Of the fern. So you're just going to add just a slight bit of color to the inside of each one of those leaves. Okay, so I've done the dark color. Now I'm going to move to the light color. And I'm not actually going to pick up any ink from my ink pad here because I want this to stay lighter. So I'm just going to use whatever ink is left over in my brush. Okay, so you can see that it's not perfect. I was really generous with adding it and didn't care too much about staying within the lines. It just kind of adds to that whole feeling. So now we're going to clean our paintbrush, and then we will move on to the flower. So you can clean these brushes by just squeezing the water and brushing it back and forth until it runs clear. And then for our flower, just going to do the same thing with the terracotta tile. So I'm just going to put our leaf fern to the side, get a little bit of this color with some water mixed in, and then we're just going to add this to the petals. I'm going to start with the darker color down near the base of each petal. And again, you can be really free with this. It doesn't need to be perfect. If you need to pick up more color, you can do that. Okay, so once we've got the dark color in there, then you can go back and just add a little bit of lighter color, moving up that petal a little bit. And to get that lighter color, you just don't want to add any more ink to your brush, and it just will lighten up as you move around. Now for the pink or the lighter one, you're just going to do the same thing. You can just get a little bit down where it should be a little darker, and then you're just going to really lighten it up as you come up. You don't want it to be as dark as the first flower, just so there's some interest and things look a little different on your card between those two images. So I'm just really picking up the ink that has a lot of water to it so that I'm not getting a really dark color in that area. Okay, so now I'm just going to lighten that up by finishing the rest of the flower with just a very light watercolor wash on the tips. Okay, so you can see the difference between the light and the dark. Now we're going to add a little bit of the Bumblebee into the center. So again, just squeeze the pad until you get some ink on the lid, and then pick up some yellow. Now I didn't clean it because it was pretty much empty after painting the rest of those flowers. But if you still had some pink from that terracotta tile, you'd want to clean your brush before adding it to that yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and clean it now, and then we can put those to the side. So I just remembered that we're going to add some splattering to our background. Now this is mostly dry for me, so this is a good time to add some splattering. You don't want to do it when it's too wet, or the splatter will just dissipate and you won't really see it. So I'm just going to kind of clean up my area. I'm going to squeeze a lot of water here into this terracotta tile, and then I'm just going to use the lid, and I'm splattering just on the top and on the bottom, a little bit maybe on the sides, just to add a little bit more color to that background piece. And I'm going to let that dry. Go ahead and clean that once again. And then you can use like a napkin, paper towel to clean off that lid. So let's look at our card one more time. So I think we've done all of our stamping and coloring. And so now we're going to fussy cut out these images. So you're going to take your flowers and your ferns and a good pair of paper snips, and you're just going to start fussy cutting these out. I'll do one of the ferns, and then I will turn the camera off and finish these, and then we'll come back and put the card together. Okay, so you'll notice that I went ahead and just snipped off that little stem there. We don't need it. We're not going to be seeing any of those stems, so you really don't even need to do the stem if you didn't want to. So I'm going to go ahead and finish fussy cutting out the ferns and the flowers, and then I'll be right back. So I have finished cutting out all my images, and my background paper is dry, as well as my greeting. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run this background paper through the embossing folder, and that's just going to give it another element of texture. And I'm going to do this with my die cutting machine, and I will be right back. Okay, so you can see how that's added another level of texture and really softened up those images quite a bit. Okay, so we can start putting our card together. I've got a card base of thick Whisper White Cardstock, and it's just your regular size, which is 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and fold along that score line, and then just use a bone folder to make a nice crease. I'm going to add some of that paper in the background, and this paper has some really pretty texture on it, and I just like that wood color or that wood side, and it just really lends to that nice natural kind of feeling of the card. So I'm going to add this with just a little bit of liquid glue. You don't want to add too much glue, especially to a lightweight paper like this designer series paper, because it can warp and wrinkle your paper. So you just want to make sure it lines up with your edges, because it's a full sheet. So this sheet of paper is 4 1/4 by 5.5. And so it's going to cover the entire front of your card. And then once it's on there, you're just going to smooth out the glue underneath so you don't get any warping or bubbling from that liquid glue. Next, we're going to add our textured paper. And I just want it to look a little more distressed. So I'm just going to bring in the corners of each of this cardstock just to make it add a little more distressed look to those edges. If I wanted, I could also distress the edges with my paper snips by running that along those edges to just loosen up those fibers. And again, just distress the corners. If you tear it a little bit, that's okay. You're just wanting a nice distressed texture look. So this is going down right on top. And again, I'm using liquid glue. The reason for it with this one is because it has that texture to it. And I just want to make sure that I've got a nice good bond with those papers. And again, just use your bone folder to smooth everything out. All right, now we're going to add our greeting. And the reason I'm going to add the greeting is so that we can kind of tuck things up and around the sides and the top so that everything kind of feels like it's together. Now this watercoloring turned out really fun. I like all the different variations of color, and it seems to be more of an edge than this one turned out. So I really like how that technique can give you a whole bunch of different looks. So you need to be okay with that. If you don't like it, then just do the white embossing on a plain piece of old olive cardstock. So this is going to be adhered to our card with some dimensionals. And I'm just going to place some in the corners so that I can have access to the sides for the adding my little elements and things. And it's just going to be placed in the bottom left corner, and you want to leave about a 1/2 inch around it on the bottom and on the left. And now we can kind of start adding our elements. So I've got one down here on the bottom right, and you can see how easy it is to tuck things in when you don't have a dimensional in the way. So you just kind of want to keep that dimensional out of there and just keep them in the corners. I'm going to add just a little bit of glue to the back of this fern, and I'm going to slide it in and then just kind of move things around until it fits where I want it. I want to make sure it doesn't come off this edge too far. Okay, and then for this one up here, I'm going to bring it over so that it's coming to the edge of the card here as well, but it's not going to cover my brown one up there. So somewhere about there. Now for my other two ferns, I've actually cut one down. And so what I've done is taken these top 3 and just removed them from this bottom one. And so I'll just show you how I did that. So I'm just going to follow this shape down, and then I'm going to cut across that stem and then follow this fern back up. So I'm just kind of fussy cutting around that fern, and then I'm going to come around and do the same for this one. And so now I've got a nice looking bunch of leaves, and that can come down here below that one. And then this group of 3, I'm just going to finish trimming off this extra cardstock to make it nice and smooth looking, and come down a little bit on the stem. And then that's just going to kind of be tucked up between the 2 flowers here. So I can go ahead and add this one with some liquid glue. And that's just going to be tucked around on the left, top left of that greeting. So that's kind of where our images will be. This one is not added yet, but it will be once we finish putting those flowers down. So the next thing would be the flowers. So this one just gets added with glue, and we're just going to tuck this under the label slightly and off to the side of those ferns. And you can kind of rotate it to be at any angle that works for you. So that one works for me. And then this one is going to be another angle, and we're just going to put some dimensionals here and a little bit of dab of glue right there, because that's going to sit on the label. And then we can place 2 dimensionals on this side. And we're just going to bring that down somewhere about there. Again, we don't want it to come off our card. Like that. And that's adhered to the label. And then this piece will just kind of get tucked up between those 2. Like that. Okay, so the last thing we're going to add are the embellishments. So I've got this little fern piece from the Tasteful elements, and I'm also going to use some of these circle pieces. So I've just got 2 of those. I'm just punching them out. They come out really easy. And then I'm just going to use my liquid adhesive again, and I'm going to add these two. I'm just going to add it to the back, just a couple dots near the bottom. Whoop. Good thing that didn't get glue everywhere. And then that just slides up underneath this flower. And then these two little ones go right around here. And I'm just going to place actually a dab of glue on the paper because it's a little easier to control, and then place the dot over that dab of glue. Like that. Okay, so that card is all done. Now there are lots of layers, and it's a pretty intense card when you think about all the different steps and the techniques that we used. But I think it's worth it, especially when you are saying hello to that special friend. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, and share. Visit creativechelsea.com for a free tutorial of this project and to purchase the supplies needed. Have a creative day! Bye!